Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's Cody, Gotham's Capes Crusader, and we're here with our good friend, John Anthony Chihak Soltero of the Bubba Patrol, and we're keeping it geekly. My man, how are you doing? How is everything going? And let's go ahead and start breaking it down with the Bubba Patrol.
I'm good, man. Thank you for, I know we were talking about it beforehand. Thank you for however it happened that you found me on Twitter and we got to talking and inviting me to be on your show.
Yeah, dude. I am absolutely interested in anything coming my way, and this really sparked my interest. And the thing is, it was before I knew how personal this project was. All these characters are based off your actual dogs, and I thought that I love that idea, my man. So let's go ahead and break that down. The first one, Sabu, what drew you to make a comic about him?
So it initially started in, I would say the beginnings of the Bubba Patrol started in 2012, but it actually predates that by about 3 years. The first 4 pages of issue 1 of the Bubba Patrol were actually the first 4 pages of issue 5 of my previous book, Euthanasia. And some of the characters, or actually all of the characters, technically carry over because it's all the same universe. But I did this little free comic book day mini comic where Agnew finds Sabu, finds him in quotations, on the streets because he's out walking his hot dog. The guy that he sidekicks for, John Nash, who is based on me, and his girlfriend Kyle wouldn't let him have a dog. And so Agnew's just out walking his hot dog. And of course, little scruffy little rat terrier, teacup chihuahua eats the hot dog. Agnew finds him, sneaks him into the apartment. They fall asleep. They wake up when Nash and Kyle come home. And the whole thing turns into basically how like a kind of a quasi way of when we actually got Sabu. The woman I was dating at the time woke me up on a weekend and told me we were going to go to this suburb of Tucson where we live. And the suburb, like, people make fun of it and stuff like that. I kind of make fun of it too, because it's kind of like Juggalo Central. Like it's not terrible, but like that's kind of the joke about it. And so we go to a Circle K just off the interstate, and it's probably looks like a seedy drug deal. This guy pulls up in a car. For whatever reason, I acknowledge him, I know who this is. I have no idea who we're meeting to get this dog. And he comes walking up, and he's got Sabu, who at the time was 7 or 8 weeks old, and he could literally fit in my hands like this. And the instant I saw him, I fell in love with him. And the kind of the rib or the rub on that is that when she woke me up and said, we're going to get a dog, I was just like, I've got a dog. Cypress lives at my mom's house. She's my dog. I don't want another dog. I definitely don't want a little dog. And upon seeing him, I couldn't help myself and fell in love with him. And we named him Sabu after my favorite wrestler at the time. And this dog was absolutely fearless, just like the wrestler. Not the biggest dog in the world. He maxed out at maybe 8 to 10 pounds. He would dive off of stuff, crash into things. He loved to wrestle with Foley once we got Foley and Gurry.
Is Foley another wrestler reference? Mick Foley?
Yeah, we were gonna name him Cactus Jack, but he was so cute. We were like, you can't name him Cactus Jack.
Mr. Sacco instead?
Yeah. So we named him, of course, Foley. And then later that year, I think we actually met Mick Foley at Comic-Con. And we told him that we named our dog Foley. And he goes, well, is he like me? And I was just like, yeah, man, he's he's a scrapper. He loves to wrestle with his brother Sabu. And, he's it's kind of hard to tell that to somebody without it sounding really insulting. You're he's real scruffy looking. but he's a sweetheart. And he was just like, no, I get it.
That's him pretty much, though. I mean,
Yeah.
like his persona was so insane on the camera, but in actuality, he didn't want his kids watching him like bleed and stuff. He was really sensitive to that nature. That is such an awesome story, man. So what about the other one? In issue 1 of Bubba Patrol, there was 3 dogs. So let's hear about the last one.
So Guri and Foley we adopted together. We wanted a friend for Sabu because we went to work every day. He was alone in the apartment. So again, my girlfriend at the time found a listing on Craigslist for a family whose dog had gotten pregnant, and they were trying to rehome the puppies. And we get there, we brought enough money for 1 dog. Now, this family, they had a kid who has epilepsy, and they had a neighbor who convinced them, like, don't just give the dogs away. Weird people show up when you want to give animals away. You gotta ask people for a rehoming fee. They didn't understand that. And then she said, well, you can use the money for your son's treatments. And they were like, oh, okay, cool. So we show up, there's 4 puppies left. The people were convinced that their dog, they had a boy dog and a girl dog, and they were convinced that their male Chihuahua was the father, but these dogs were obviously not Chihuahuas. They just didn't look like Chihuahuas, but they were part poodles. So 2 of the puppies just stayed in the box with the mom. They were like, we don't want to have anything to do with you. We don't care. These other dogs come out, and we couldn't decide between them. And the people were like, you only brought enough for 1 dog? And we were like, yeah, we didn't really want to get 2. And they were like, well, do you want both of them? And we were like, well, yeah. You know, because like at that point, they're like kissing you and you can't put them back.
Yeah.
And so they let us take both of them. And we go home. And at that point, Sabu had grown up a little bit. And he was probably about 6 pounds, 7 pounds. And these other guys were like yay big. They were like literally, again, could fit in the palm of your hand. And so we named Foley. We're going to name him Cactus Jack, of course. With Guri, she actually had the little white J on her chest. And just like in the book, my girlfriend's like, well, what if we name her Harley Quinn? Because, you know, she's got the J on her chest. We thought about it. And then we named her after the character Guri in the euthanasia book. And so that's why, like, that's the joke inside the book, where it's like, you can't name it after a comic book character. Well, I'm going to name her after me. And so
my character, yeah.
Yeah, you break the 4th wall a couple of times in that issue where they're just like, well, you just said you can't name the dog after a comic book character. And like, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny the way that we did the naming, which wasn't going to take place until issue 2. But then I realized I was like, you can fit these 2 pages in and it would work really, really well. Especially with the conversation that Agnew is having with Guri, where she's like, "And so you said you just found them?" And he's like, "Yeah, for the millionth time, I found them." Like I didn't go looking for them or anything.
I really enjoyed though. In book 1, there was like, it felt like a 4th wall break where they were sitting at like a lemonade stand. I think it was right after there was the ad for a variant cover art of Agnew. It was like one of the dogs was sitting like a lemonade stand, was giving advice or something like that.
Yeah, that was like the 2nd comic strip I drew of the dogs.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was another throwback too that I really enjoyed. I could have sworn I read something that's saying there was a panel from it was like an ad from the euthanasia, like one of the back books at some part.
There may have been. I'd have to take a look at it right now. I tend not to like reread things that I do a whole lot.
I gotcha.
But yeah, there's there's like different things that like I love to put slogans and images on t-shirts and then change them from page to page, and like it just changes like the message. So there was each of the characters at one point at the very end of the book is wearing a shirt that is a reference to my favorite comic book of all time, Teenagers from Mars. So one of them's wearing a shirt that says CBLA, Comic Book Liberation Army. One of them's wearing like a solid graphic image of the Phantom's ring, which one of the characters in that book wears. And then one of them is wearing, I think, just a shirt that says TFM on it. And so like I wanted to pay tribute to that book. And I think I actually reached out to Rick Spears and Rob G, who worked on that book. And I was just like, hey, would it be cool if I use like one of the cover images just on a t-shirt for like one panel of my book? And Rick Spears wrote back to me and he was just like, man, I'm sorry, I can't let you do that. It has to do with like trademarks and copyrights. And I was like, no, man, that's cool. You know, I mean, thanks for letting me know. So I found a way around it, you know. But for people who know me or for people who've read that book, that's like one of those little like in jokes about it. But yeah.
So let's talk about Agnew a little bit as well. I really enjoyed his side of the story, and when things started getting a little bit more heated, and keep in mind too, this is a golden and silver age kind of comic where it's not really focused on being hyper violent and gritty. It's, you know, it has a more wholesome feel. So Agnew gave me big Wolverine vibes.
Well, yeah, because he's wearing the tiger stripe costume colors. Originally, his costume in that issue was just going to be a solid black ninja costume. And when I got to the coloring stage of it, I was just like, that's really boring. Like, you're not going to see any sort of emotion. I mean, this needs to be colorful. And if you have this character where all you're seeing is this and it's like little hands and feet, like that's real boring. And unless there's a ton of action where there's like, you know, fights and blood and stuff like that, that doesn't really work. So one of the things that I just decided, like spur of the moment with coloring, was we'll just give him the tiger stripe costume. So that's what we went with, and then I kind of just modified the mask a little bit to fit that need. But in subsequent issues, like issue 4 and now issue 5, he's rocking the like mustard and brown costume, and he's even got the like his little hair winged back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like, I love the Wolverine character just because of how tough he is. But for Agnew, it's kind of about him, like, as it's the journey for these dogs to become heroes. Like, Agnew is also finding his identity as a character and switching from being like a comedic sidekick to being like, he's the leader of this group. Like, he's got to be able to make decisions. And so that really kind of comes into play in a dialogue he has with Cypress in issue 5 about him figuring out who he is, and Cypress telling him, I've got faith in you, I believe in you, you know what to do. So that's kind of like where I went. But I also just wanted to give, you know, just a lot of like sight gags and Easter eggs. And like, I get a kick out of that, doing that in the background. But when you can kind of put it in the foreground and people see it, they appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and I gotta be honest, I did, and there was another, and I might be off with this. Pashaw really gave me Kingpin vibes, but I only got to see the backside. I only got to see just the arm and the big chair, but the vibe, just the way he handled business, the way he got down to business, it definitely felt like he was like a criminal overlord. Yeah.
With my book Euthanasia, I wanted to do the gang war storyline, like they've done in Daredevil, like where you have these two mob bosses going after each other. And I wanted to do, because there's always the cliche, like Mr. Big. And I wanted to do that, but it's when you get to issue 3, the reveal of Mr. Big is really interesting. Like, it's one page, and you're like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on with this? And he shows up again in issue 5. So you see him like from the side, like his arm in issue 1. You see him full on as to who he is in issue 3. And then you see him again because he plays an integral role in what's going on with Poyojira and with Grayson and Guri and Foley as well, because they were trapped in his warehouse.
Yeah.
But one of the things I always I noticed and kind of bothered me about some comic books is the alliterative names. Like it's kind of goofy, like Peter Parker, Reed Richards, Sue Storm. So this character's name is Aaron A. Aronson. So he's known in the underworld as the alliteration. Okay. Because he's, it's all the same initials kind of. So I just thought that would be kind of like a clever throwback. That's actually not revealed in any of the stories, so I don't know why I'm giving that away.
Get a little bit of a leak, but hey, your secret is safe with us. An interesting note, though. Let's talk about going from the robotic hamsters to the massive chicken lizards. You said they were called Poyojira? Poyojira. Yeah. So let's talk about that, because that seems to be a larger focus in the later issues. How is your creative flow going from one end to the other? Because the robotic hamsters were seem pretty small, and then these huge chicken lizards seem pretty in depth, especially with the artwork from the 5th issue. Well,
I was gonna say, once you see the interaction, it's actually kind of like more comedic, but yeah. So the robotic hamster sentries were just part of the script, and it was also part of like the dialogue gag where like Agnew had gotten fooled into like staying in place because Sabu said there's a security grid, and you need to stay put because I'll go handle this. And so he doesn't believe him that there's robot hamster sentries, and believe it or not, like when it jumps from him walking away, just being like, yeah, right, there's robot hamster sentries, you're not getting me again, to the very next page where he's standing there with his claws and there's like a head hanging off of it, and Sabu's got one in his mouth, and they're like, wow, there really were robot hamster sentries. Like, there was no action sequence scripted. Like that was the gag. Like I didn't necessarily want to like inundate it with so much like action that it really lost like the comedy and the heart. So I just thought like, oh, if we just skip to the very tail end of this, and it's just them like dealing with the aftermath, and there's little parts all over the place, it'd be kind of funny. But I was thinking about like, what sort of challenges do these characters get? Because I can't have them face off with anything too dark, and I don't want them to have to face off with anything that's going to be, like your world-ending event like Darkseid or anything like that. At least not yet. So going from the robot hamster sentries to Poyojira actually kind of happened within that time frame. So the first book came out in 2017, and then in 2018 I don't want to say competed, but I took part in my first Inktober, and there were a number of different like prompt sheets that I was looking at. Some of them I liked, some of them I didn't like, so I would pull the lists from wherever I wanted. And I found one for, I forget which day it was, but it was Godzilla. And so I drew a Godzilla, and then after that I was like, I don't really like this. This isn't that great. What if there was a giant chicken lizard and his name was Poyojira? And so then I redrew, like in this little ratty sketchbook, Poyojira for the first time in 2018. And that's where the concept came from. And I was just like, okay, I got to use that for like the first character, the first villain they have to go up against.
Does the name have any certain meaning?
So Pollo is Spanish for chicken. And then with Godzilla, like originally it was Gojira. So I just combined both of them together. And
that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just basically me having fun one day doing a sketch on a prompt, and then deciding like, hey, this would work. I could do this. So I had told a friend at the time, I was just like, his art style would have really worked for like a cover, and I was already thinking about a wraparound cover. And ultimately, it didn't end up having him do it, but had two other artists, local artists here in Tucson, do those variants, and they crushed them. So I was super ecstatic with the turnout for that.
So since issue 1, has Bill Simpson been your colorist for every issue, or have you been the self writer and artist for a lot of the beginning?
So for issues 1 through 3, I wrote, drew, and colored. Like right before we came on live or we started recording, I was telling you that when I was working on one of the issues, I like dropped a hard drive and I lost all my files. That was issue 3. I was literally on the last page, inking the last page in Clip, and I nudged it or whatever. I wasn't saving it to my desktop. I wasn't saving it in the cloud. I didn't understand how to do that yet. And the hard drive broke, obviously. I lost absolutely everything, including like a ton of baby pictures of like my dogs. And so that like really just kicked me in the teeth. Like I was like, I can't do this again. I can't, redraw 32 pages. That's not that it's impossible, but like, what am I going to do? And
you get that, you get that creative juice going the first time, and it's so hard to replicate that. It's so hard because you get the vision in your head. Well, this is what it looked like, and then you end up trying too hard to replicate that magic the first time. I get that, man. That pains me just to hear.
Well, it's interesting, like kind of the journey creatively along with how it intersects with my life. Like literally a few weeks before losing the hard drive, whoa.
About to lose your light.
My lights just flickered off and on. So literally like a couple of weeks before losing all the files, I got diagnosed bipolar. And so it explained so many things about like the previous 40 years of my life. And like that coupled with losing all the files, I started not being able to sleep very well, where I was waking up at like, no matter when I went to bed, I was waking up at like 5:30 in the morning. And so I was chronically tired. I had just, like I knew, but I didn't know, it just being diagnosed. And then also Foley's health changed at that point. So there was like this slew of things that I had to deal with first quarter of 2020. Yeah,
sounds like a horrible snowball.
Yeah, it sucked. So at the end of February of 2020, Foley was diagnosed with cancer, and the vets gave him like 6 months to live. So that, coupled with rereading issue number 2 of the Bubba Patrol, there's a scene between Cypress and Agnew where Agnew is talking about how he's a sidekick. He's not a hero. Like, I don't know why you picked me. This doesn't make any sense. And Cypress very calmly tells him, you're stronger and smarter than you know. Every adventure you've been on has prepared you for this moment. And you are my first, last, and only choice to lead this team. And it sounds kind of sappy because they're words I wrote, but they always make me pause and they always make me think, because that's what Cypress did for me as the first dog that I ever had. She brought me a sense of calm and composure, and she made me understand that I could be loved. and not that I was ever like not loved by my parents, but like as a angry 15-year-old, like it's very hard to accept that love, especially when you're battling all these different things going on inside you. So rereading that dialogue gave me the strength to like, I have to do this. Like, I am strong enough to do this. So I started reworking on 32 pages. One page was saved because it was still on my desktop at the time. And so I started reworking on it, and all of a sudden the USB ports on my 11-year-old laptop just are like, yeah, see ya.
Oh my God.
So I kind of jokingly and out of frustration put out a feeler on Facebook, and I was just like, laptop's dead. Who wants to buy me a new laptop? And believe it or not, a friend was just like, how much money do you need? And I was just like, what? And he's like, for a new laptop. I was just like, oh no, man, that was me being facetious, and I was just frustrated. And he goes, no, I'm serious. How much money do you need? And so I started doing research on a good laptop. My dad came up with the other half, and that's what I'm recording on right now. That's what I do all my digital work on. I don't use it for anything else than that. Like the other broke down laptop is in the other room. That's what I stream stupid stuff on. So I got back to work on issue 3, and this is a long-winded answer to your question about Bill Simpson.
No, this is good. This is good.
So I'm starting to work on this again. Bill was actually at the coffee house the day that the hard drive fell and broke, and without prompting or anything, he's just like, give me some pages, all income. And I was like, what? And he's like, give me some pages, all income.
Did you know him like more personally at the time, or was this just like a random encounter?
So I met Bill in 2018, end of 2018, where he was, he had joined an art group called Arizona Comic Book Creators. Probably shouldn't say that name because we're not associated with them anymore. But that's when I first met him. And he went over his work history, where he had done colors for Extreme Studios. He had done colors for Top Cow. He'd even done colors for Marvel Comics. So yeah, I didn't know Bill. Like, I'd known him for a little over a year, and we had both kind of like moved away from this other group where we had met. And some of the other people like left that group, and we became friends and just started, hanging out and doing our own art stuff. And he was just like, give me some pages, all income. And he also used Clip Studio, so it was compatible. And he actually inked like 9 of the 40 pages of issue 3. So a big amount of credit goes to Bill for helping me be able to just like bounce back from that. Just A, from offering his support, and B, from inking literally a quarter of the book.
So let me ask you this, and sorry to interrupt, but from like a reader standpoint, 9 pages, how much is that in terms of like inking, like drawing, like how much of your day goes into even just one page, just to put it in perspective for our listeners?
So if I were doing this traditionally, which I'm now doing it digitally, there were some nights when I was on like a roll. I could get into a coffee house and set up my like board and everything like that. And I could literally pencil like 2 to 3 pages between like 9 o'clock and midnight when the coffee house closed. Now, for people who think that's a lot, it is a lot in a 3-hour period. But I've also drawn these characters for a really long time. It's a very simplified, more animation style than it is more traditional comic books. Like what you see behind you right here on this banner, that's pretty much what I'm producing inside of the book. So it's more line style and then color fill, like more of a 2D cell shading color fill. So when I'm doing digital, I'm actually able to work even faster in theory, not necessarily producing 3 pages a day, but I can kind of cut out having to do my layouts first, because I can do all my rough layouts from my script on the page, tighten them up a little bit, and then throw another layer on top of it, start doing my things. So that's kind of how I approach that. If you ask the average penciler, you're looking at between 1 and 2 pages of pencils a day. Inks are a little bit different, because you're re-rendering whatever the penciler did. You're tightening it up, you're cleaning it up, you're making it more solid and substantial. And so it's not just tracing it, but it's interpreting those pencils for the story. So some of that's got to be filled in like jet black, some of it's got to be cross-hatched, and then of course there's the different line styles that people use. So they use a brush or a quill. I use like tech pens. So all my line weights are pretty universal, especially the exterior lines. I usually do them the thickest because I want the character to pop out. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. I didn't mean to get you off tangent with Bill, but I was interested because that's a question I really haven't asked a whole lot. For me, I just read the books, and talk, and I never had a chance to actually sit down and you're for the first 2 and most of 3 issues you were the one doing it all. So
yeah,
it seemed like a heavy workload.
It was 3 especially, but then when 4 came about, so 3 was literally at the printers, and this was 2020, like August, September 2020, and I'm tuning into, God, this last 2 years have just flown by. It's so crazy. I'm watching DC Fandom. And I think I was doing some work on some stuff. And so I have both of my laptops set up. I've got like my design laptop and I'm doing work. And then I have my other laptop streaming DC Fandom, and I'm like listening to what's going on and watching some of the videos and getting inspired. And I end up writing the outline for what was just going to be issue 4, and the final issue of the arc, like that night. So after Fandom, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to Bookman's, which is like a local entertainment superstore here in Tucson and Arizona, actually. And was like looking around at some graphic novels and noticed that like the line was insane. So I'm just like, I'm not gonna wait in line just to buy this, Jump back in my car and start driving home. And it hit me because I had gotten some writer's block and I didn't know how to get that one part that connects, that finishes the story. And on the drive home, it hits me. There's one line in one of the books, and it plays it, and that's the thing that was the catalyst for like, okay, this is the story. And so I came home and I finished the outline, and I think the very next day I started the script, and within 2 or 3 days I had 40 pages written, and then started penciling it, thinking you're doing 40 pages, the last issue is going to be 40 pages. And I get to page 26 of pencils, and I'm like, this is the perfect stopping point. It ends on a cliffhanger. It gives you 26 pages. Sure, you've only got 14 pages over here, but you can figure out how to fill that in. And I did. So that's when I started doing my inks and talking to a couple of people. And the working with Bill and working with some of these other creators has really helped me build my communication skills as like project leader.
Mhm.
Because I'll hint something to somebody and be like, hey, do you want to do this? And it's something I want to do, but I'm not just going to ask them like, hey, I was wondering, do you want to go to the movies with me? It'll be more like, what do you think about this movie coming up? You know,
And
like,
get them to prompt to ask you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And
I gotcha.
so, I got Bill to agree to do some colors, and he started doing some colors, or I actually told him, I was like, so I'm thinking of hiring a colorist for this, like knowing full well I wanted to ask him to do it. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I might know a guy.
He's like, yeah, why don't you hire me?
Well, he was, and that was the full intent, was to hire him. And so I talked to him and I sent him some pages and he started working on them. Sent him some more pages and he was working on them. And he suddenly asks me, how many pages are you going to color? And I'm like, what? I mean, I'll color whatever you don't want to color or whatever you're not able to. And he's just like, wait, am I the colorist on this book? And I was just like, I mean, would you like to be the colorist on this book? And he's like, all right, yeah, no, I'm cool with that. So he colored all of 4. And then when we were getting finished with issue 4, that was the beginning of 2021, like the first quarter of 2021. So right about where we are now. And Bill had come over a couple of times and like we, talked in person and really solidified things. And, he got to know my dogs, Grayson and Foley at the time. And he came over the night before, or was it the day before? Maybe it was the day of that I had to put Foley down. And so he got to say goodbye to Foley. He got to see Grayson. And we, so once that was over and I kind of dealt with that, I asked him, I was just like, would you like to do a cover for this issue? And I have a couple of ideas about it. And he was like, okay. And I was like, I kind of want a solo Foley cover, like a Foley Forever cover. But I also want like this one team shot that we end up using in issue 5. And he's just like, I'd like to do the Foley cover. And I'm like, okay. And so Bill sends me a thumbnail sketch via text message like the next day. And it's a rough sketch, but I knew exactly what it was. And he had done an homage cover to Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes 23, where it's an Adam Hughes cover. It's absolutely beautiful. She is sitting on an asteroid that's hurtling its way into Earth's atmosphere. Cape is blowing back, the hair is blowing back, the asteroid is heating up, and there's just like, not flames coming off of it, but just the immense heat. And he sends me this rough thumbnail with like a little blob and lines for the cape and a little blob for the rock and like motion lines. And I'm like, I know what that is, and go with it.
Yes.
So he did a physical copy of it. Like he did a line art copy of it. Because I really want, like, I'm a very sentimental person. Like I like to have the physical sides of things. That's why I don't like digital comics very much. And so I asked him, I was like, can you do a traditional? And he's just like, well, I can, but it's going to look way better digitally. And I'm like, okay. And he's just like, well, how about I do the line art? And then I can basically knock all the lines out and kind of repaint it digitally. It's just like, that works. And he started showing me the progress on it. I was just like, this is amazing. So I decided that we'd have that and that'd be a limited cover. And that was originally going to be the only variant. But then I wanted to get another artist involved as well. And so Vic Hollins came forward and she produced this great piece with Grayson and Foley together. They were kind of like images from their photo shoot for a calendar that they were in for 2021. wearing their capes and everything, and she crushed that because she does this like acrylic and watercolor, like photorealistic type stuff. And so we did the Facebook campaign, and we raised enough for what I thought was going to be enough to print issue 4. And then I wasn't able to use the printer I was using previously, so I had to find another one, and the print cost was like double.
Oh, wow.
To do it. And I'm just like, okay, so we got to run a real campaign for this. And so ran another campaign and raised the remaining amount of money. And then, got it fulfilled. And it was the single biggest campaign I've ever done in my entire life. And was just a lot of fun doing that. But then it was like back to the drawing board. Like, you got to start working on issue 5. And at that point, I try to have the book as close to being done as possible. So with this one, with issue 5, I added another. This book is 28 pages, so I added another 14 pages of story. But it was actually, I think, technically 26 pages of script, and then there was one panel in one page that I was just like, that's its own page. And that's how we end the story. And so this time I straight up asked Bill, will you be the colorist on this book? And he was just like, totally. This one took a little bit longer for us to produce because after Foley's death, I started having a real hard time like bouncing back from it and producing work. And but it got to the point where I had like 6 or 7 pages in July that I needed to have finished, and I didn't finish them until November. And I was like beating myself up about it. But there was after Foley's death, I was in a car accident that didn't injure me or injure anybody else, but it kind of derailed everything because like I had to deal with that and deal with the aftermath of that and insurance and all that BS. And then like September hits, and that's when I adopt a new dog, Chica. And from the adult care home where my grandmother was living, which is like 2 doors down from where I am. And so I went on like lunch break to meet the dog. 2 days later, I go to pick her up. And then like literally the next week, my grandma dies. And she was 92. She was on her way to be 93. She had a very turbulent life, like a lot of mental health issues. I don't want to say she suffered through most of it, but it was a very, very difficult life for her because for somebody who's that age to have been, had that mindset and not mindset, but to have those, what would have been those diagnoses at like age 5 and 6, way back when, like it wasn't bipolar. It was an obsessive compulsive disorder. You were crazy back then.
Yeah.
And she was the oldest of all her siblings. She was responsible for taking care of her mom, and that was very hard for her to do. I would say she was a control freak, but now that I understand that I also have bipolar, like I understand like these are the things that I have to like grip tightly and control. And these are also the things that learning it at my age, like I can kind of at least start working on like, okay, I can't control this. So I gotta let this go, or try to anyways. So she passed. That was hard, but obviously not unexpected because she was 92. Fortunately had nothing to do with COVID. She was just, her body just gave up. And so we're getting ready for her service. We're all saying goodbye. And then like a week after her service, her youngest daughter dies.
Man, dude, you went through a lot of turmoil.
Yeah.
A couple questions. How hard, and I don't mean to get too deep into it, but how hard was it working on book 5 after, losing so much? How much do you feel like of it was kind of like your farewell to them as well? Did you put any of that into it?
I did, actually. So after my aunt died, and my aunt isn't just my aunt. My aunt is a huge reason why I'm in social work, if not the reason why I'm in social work. She was special needs. She had autism, no speech, a lot of repetitive behaviors, things like that. And my aunt Lisa was 56, I believe. She was living in a group home, which we finally got my grandmother to relinquish that control and let her be in a group home, where she actually started to flourish. She wasn't under the control of my grandmother, so she got to have her own routine. She got to kind of be her own person.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she was never going to live independently, she got to be as independent as possible. And so from a really young age, I told my mom and my grandma, I'm going to be her guardian when I get old. And they were both like, that's nice, thinking it was just a kid saying this. And I was just like, no, I'm serious. And so then after college, I had a job I hated. I worked retention at AOL. And that job was so terrible.
That does not sound fun at all.
I don't know how many breakdowns I probably had, but the best moment of my day was leaving and driving home. And by the time I got home, I realized I had to go back the next day. So that feeling of happiness didn't last long. So I was there for 6 months. I quit that job to take a job that paid considerably less, working at a group home for adults with developmental disabilities. And worked in a couple of different group homes, became assistant manager at one of the houses, helped with Special Olympics, got to do a lot of really cool stuff. And that was all spurred on by my having a special needs aunt, because it never felt weird to me to be around somebody who was differently abled or maybe couldn't speak or communicated differently. I did that off and on, from working in group homes to day programs to group homes to working in a shelter for women and children with domestic violence, to now working with the aging. And so that was key when my grandmother passed away. She was in a care home two doors down, literally 2 doors down, and understanding more about what the aging population needs, because both my parents are now in their 70s. And it also gives me a perspective on my own mortality of what's my legacy? What am I going to do? So even though all of the other dogs have died, or I had to say goodbye to them, with Cypress, it was, she was 16. She had lost a third of her body weight. She couldn't see very well. She couldn't hear. And it was time. And it took me a long time to realize that. With Sabu, it was this emergency medical thing that just happened with him, and he had to make a split-second decision. With Guri, I was a little bit past celebrating 1 year of sobriety. And I went to go get a tattoo to celebrate that and my newfound outlook on different believing in myself and being more powerful and stuff like that. And I come back and she's gone. So it was just me and Foley and Grayson from 2017 to now. And Guri actually died after I finished the script for issue 1. And so it had been sitting on my desk collecting dust. And when that happened, I was like, okay, you've got to do this now. And I basically had shut down my entire weekend, and I was just like, well, you're not going to accomplish anything this weekend. And I thought to myself, no, there was a plan for this weekend. This is what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to bury Guri. You're going to rearrange your front room so that people can come over and hang out with you. And it's not just two people stuck in this little tiny room. And so I did that. And then I drew a little sketch card of Guri, just for my day. And it was like, now you got to work on the book.
Mm-hmm.
And crank that out super fast. And then, we jump forward to 2021 and having to say goodbye to Foley. He held on past Christmas, past New Year's, long enough for me to be strong enough to say, okay. And I tried to make a whole day of it. Like, I give these dogs personalities. I give them little voices. Like, we talk to each other. They have their own unique way of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to give Foley waffles for his last day. Because I'm like, he gets to eat whatever he wants. He's a good boy. Like, and so I gave him waffles. I put peanut butter on it. I put honey on it. Didn't touch him. I'm like, come on, guy. Like, so it was just like treats all day long. And
I'm sure he loved it though.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about it was we did it here at home. And so my mom and my sister came. We put Foley in his cape one last time. We put Grayson in his cape so he could be a hero with his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the vet came, walked us through everything. I've got a paw imprint back there. I've got a little thing of hair back there. His cape is right there. In that shadow box. His grandma Marilyn from Missouri made that for him. And
so I was going to ask real quick too, because I noticed I mean everything you went through already has sounded like hell, but on top of that, like fighting your sobriety, staying sober, like that had to just be a hell within itself to endure. Like, man, I gotta give you big props for that. Like, you went through a lot of hell, but fighting for all that and keeping this book on track, like that's some big steps, man.
Well, part of it was the dogs really helped me with that. They were there the entire time I was drinking myself into a stupor every night. Believing things were as they were not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is in part why this book is so important to me, because they are my heroes and they've helped keep me on track. They've seen me in my worst moments, but they've also helped get me to the point where I can look at myself in the mirror now, or I'm starting to be able to look myself in the mirror now and admit where I've been and what I've come from, and now being able to kind of let that go. And even though I can't change it, but I can be better as every day.
Yeah. Breaking away from alcohol is no easy feat. I suffered with drinking for years, and it got to a point where I was escaping to it. You end up just escaping to that bottle. It helps you. It helps you function when you don't want to function. It fills that void without you realizing you're becoming a void because of it. And and it's totally. Just it's so hard to get away from the grips of it. I'm celebrating. I think me and my girlfriend quit September of. We're probably getting close to about a year and a half right now.
Nice.
And waking up almost. It's hard, but looking back now, like waking up, like not hungover, not feeling like crap, not scrounging up a few bucks to go get drunk because you don't want to deal with the rest of the night. Like it does. It makes you become like such a better person, and that's so awesome. They got to experience that growth with you. How would you say that like incorporated into writing your books? Like, did you face a lot of challenges? Because for me, when I used to drink and do content creation, it was easier. It was easier for me to kind of just go with the flow. Like, do you feel like drinking might have been like maybe a little bit of a crutch for your writing as well?
Actually, now that I look at it, no. The stuff I was working on previous to this was like edgelord quality type stuff.
And that was the youth in Asia.
Yeah, and so it was edgy for the sake of being edgy because I was still dealing with so much, and so I was trying to write something that I thought was meaningful, or at the time I felt was meaningful, and I can look at it now for what it was. It was just my way of coping with everything, and that's it's weird because like the last issue I worked on for Euthanasia was technically issue 9, but it kind of became like its own thing. It went into this really I almost ashamed to say it. It went to this really like almost pornographic thing, from being this like just kind of like rated R, violent, nudity, drugs, rock and roll kind of thing, to being a literal escape, just like the alcohol became. And it the crazy thing, when I look at issue 9 is terrible. There's not just for the like the story itself, but like proportions are off on all the characters. Like head sizes are wrong, the bodies look bad. And I realized, like, when I was working on it, I was drinking so much that I had to correct things the next day. But even then, I was drinking to the point where like I wasn't really like fixing things. Like I really kind of wonder what it looked like before I fixed everything. And then there was a lot of things that like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with this story, like just trying to make sense of it and everything. So with the Bubba Patrol, everything comes a lot more organically, honestly, because I'm writing something that means more to me, and it is so personal that I've learned who these characters are, and I've given them a voice, and I want to see their legacy through. But it's gotten to the point where like the dialogue is just some of the most fun dialogue I've ever written in my entire life. And the way they interact with each other is so fluid. They're not talking at each other, they're talking to each other. They're interacting, and like I can feel them, when one of them says something, the other one reacts, and you're just like, that's exactly how they would talk to each other. There's a great scenario between in issue 4. They're going down an elevator to their training facility called the Dog, DAWG. And Agnew is like, obviously he doesn't drink, but like he's like hungover because he's like leaned up against the wall, and he's got his cup of coffee and he's got his shades on. Like he can barely function. Couple pages before, he literally woke up underneath the coffee table, like he was passed out under the coffee table. And the dogs are asking him, well, like, what did Cypress say? Like, and he's like, I don't remember. And they're like, it was 5 minutes ago. And he goes, well, I woke up under the coffee table, so it couldn't have been that important. And Foley, who I would argue Foley gets like the best lines in the entire series. And that's not even by design to like make Foley, make up for him dying while I was working on this, but like that was his character. Like he was when I would talk about things, because I'll be honest, like there are 2 huge mistakes in issue 1 and issue 4, and they are the dates of when Guri died and when Foley died. I'm off by a day on both of them, and every time I see that, it crushes me. And when issue 1 came out and I noticed it, I was so devastated. And Foley looks at me and he's like, it's the imperfections that make us perfect.
That's true.
Now, I know those are my thoughts, and I know that's me rationalizing it, but part of the way I process things is talking and giving it the voice of somebody else telling me that. And more importantly, giving me that knowledge coming from somebody I love, like Foley, made it able to be understood, if that makes sense. Yeah,
no, I get it.
And so Foley's dialogue in in these books is hilarious. So they're in the elevator and Agnew's like, I don't want to do this. And Foley gets super excited and he's like, maybe it's a mission. And Agnew just looks at him like with disdain. And he's like, it's 8:30 in the morning. And Foley's like, danger doesn't keep business hours. And Agnew's like, you have to stop reading so many comic books. And like all you see is the back of Foley's head looking at Agnew, and he goes, oh, well, Foley loves comic books. And Agnew's like, and stop referring to yourself in the third person.
So let's go ahead and start breaking into the Indiegogo campaign you currently have. That started February 7th, if I'm correct?
Yes.
And that's going to be running for 30 days. So it looks like you've already hit 660 USD, which is 132% of your goal. Now, I remember talking to you previously, and you said that amount right there, it's going to knock a little bit of the workout, but not completely. So how much would it take for you to be completely funded for this type of campaign?
I almost don't want to say because I don't want people to feel like they're not chipping away at it enough. So it's because of the way I'm printing it. I am printing using offset printing on newsprint. So this is not on-demand printing. It's not LaserJet printer paper. It is like, this looks and feels like a legit comic book when it's done. We're looking at probably around $2,000 to make this fully fluid. If we get anywhere around 1,500 to 1,800, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah,
you know, because I can, I'll carry that. But I'm trying to figure out, like, what if we don't make it? What do I do? And so originally the printers I was using was through Alterna Comics. They had their partnership program where they could just put stuff on the back end of their printing, but their printer, for whatever reason, in 2021 was not meeting deadlines, so they discontinued that. And so that's when I found TriStar based out of New York. And when they quoted me, the quote was like close to double what I was going to be able to do with the money that we made. So I was like, okay. But we raised enough money that way. I did end up basically paying out of pocket to ship everything, which again, I'm fine with. But when I messaged them last week, and I expected there to be an increase. And so the increase is about 10% above what I paid last time. So if we make that, we don't have to delay any further, then it's not going to be too huge. But yeah, it's going to take around $2,000 to fully make sure that this project fully gets done to my specifications. Like, I will still produce something if we don't hit that number. I don't want to scrimp on the quality of it. That's why that newsprint is so important, because like you said at the beginning, it's a throwback to the golden and silver age. Yeah. Where you had the feel of the comic, the look of how the ink saturates into the page, the smell of the book. Smell. The first thing I do when these books come back is like I crack them open, I grab the first copy, and I open it and I sniff it. And that's the copy I keep, because when you're doing offset printing, you don't get a proof. Like, they send you a PDF proof, and that's your proof. Like, because you can't be there to like pull it off and be like, okay, this looks good. And it just doesn't work that way like it does with on demand. So on demand has its benefits, but offset has its benefits because this is the way I want it to. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of your some of the tiers. What are you offering for people who are backing your project?
A little bit of everything. For people who have the entire run so far, you can get just issue 5. And issue 5, the regular cover is a Brave and the Bold 28 homage. And that's the first appearance of the Justice League and the first appearance of Starro, the Star Conqueror. who I am very fond of, especially since that character showed up in the Suicide Squad.
Oh my God, I love the Suicide Squad so much. Have you watched Peacemaker yet?
Yes,
Peacemaker is outrageous, dude.
I just caught up on the last couple of episodes yesterday.
Dude, me too. Oh man, I can't wait for episode 8. I really can't.
The character discovery and depth in that is what I want from anything that I'm reading. I like a good plot, I like a good story, but I'm a character guy.
Mm-hmm.
You give me a character that I care about, and I'm gonna watch or read or listen to whatever. You give me characters I don't care about and a compelling plot, I'm still like,
It's lukewarm.
Exactly. And this is a character you should not like. You shouldn't care about him. He's a horrible person, but there's a reason he's a horrible person.
Yes, and his dad is just, oh man, White Dragon. I don't want to put out spoilers out there, but I was very happy with how they handled White Dragon.
Robert Patrick. I went and picked up my comics today at the LCS, and I was talking to the manager there, and I'm like, he does such a good job playing a horrible human being.
Oh my God, he was the biggest piece of shit ever.
Like, my first experience with him was probably Die Hard 2, where you barely see him, and then Terminator 2, of course.
Terminator 2 was mine, yeah.
And knowing the method that he goes about with his acting, like, he trained himself not to blink when firing a gun when the muzzle flare happens. Because he was like, why would a killer machine flinch?
Dude, I remember reading something too. He trained himself, his breathing so good that during the dirt bike chase sequence, he kept catching up to them because he was able to like control his breathing enough to run that fast.
Yeah.
Insane, dude.
I'm pretty sure during filming, like when he's on screen, you don't actually see him breathe. Like you don't see his chest go in and out. Because he was just like a machine wouldn't have to breathe, right? Like
yeah.
And I'm like,
he really gave it his all for Peacemaker too. Like you almost can't tell he was from the Terminator. I mean, old age, yeah, but his mannerism, the way he's talking, everything about that character, he just nails.
You almost can't tell that he's acting.
Yeah.
Like that character, not to that extreme, mind you, really reminded me of kind of like my dad's relationship with his dad and kind of my relationship with my dad, in the sense of that Peacemaker was trying to live up or down to who his father was and what his father wanted for him. And I don't know if my dad figured it out. I mean, he has now, but I don't know if he figured it out before he was able to break away and do his own thing. That's not, like, my dad's life isn't my life. Like I'm doing what I want to do. And I know my life kind of paralleled that because, like, I always wanted my dad's approval. I always wanted him to just say he was proud of me. Like, that was my goal in life. And so, like, I 21 years ago, I decided to go back to college. And I had gone to college like right out of high school in fall of 96, and I dropped out and I was like, I don't want to do this. Beginning like middle of 2020, I developed like a lot of pain and swelling in my leg, and turned out to be cancer. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Got all my legs.
Dude, what is it? It's just, the more we talk, you're just like, yeah, dude, this. I'm just sitting here like, damn, dude, when's this guy gonna get a break?
Well, I kind of look at these things as like my cats. Like you think about heroes and like what heroes have to go through in order to be heroes. And I'm not saying I'm a hero by any stretch of the imagination, but like the creative process comes from somewhere, right? Like if your life is sunshine and rainbows and you never want for anything and you never suffer, like, are you ever thinking about what else is out there? are you ever like wanting to get better? Because if you're already kind of plateaued and you're doing good, like there's no reason to fight to get up a hill because you're already on top of the hill. So, so like that cancer diagnosis made me wake up and say, well, you're not going to get a job at Marvel or DC sitting in a coffee house every night, drawing in your sketchbook. Like nobody from Marvel or DC is going to pop in and be like, you are the one we need. Because nobody knows who you are. And so like, that made me like decide, I got to take this seriously. This is what I want to do. I need to go back to school. And there was an ad in, I don't even remember which book it was, if it was Marvel or DC. I think at that point I started reading some DC books, but I was still mostly a Marvel guy. And it was an ad for the Joe Kubert School. And they were just launching their correspondence courses. And there was like 4 different things to pick from. And I showed it to my mom and I told her, I was just like, I want to do this. You know, it's only $300. Like, I think this is what I want to do.
That's not too bad. How long was the course?
I have no idea. I don't remember. I didn't end up doing it. My mom thought better of it. She was just like, you know, doing correspondence for art, especially for design like this, is going to be hard. Why don't we take a look around town and see different schools? Because there's, you know, the U of A, Pima College, and then there was another school that I ended up going to that I don't like to say the name of because they suck and they did a lot of really unscrupulous things, including like just their financial business practices were ludicrous. In fact, there are lawsuits that are still ongoing with them and the different loan providers that that service those loans. So went to school there. Early on, one of my instructors was like, you want to do comics, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, you want to do animation? Because everything in pre-production is comics. All your, production design, your character design, your background design, your God, what are they called? Keyframing. That's basically all your product for comic books. And I was just like, okay. So I went, I graduated, got my degree. Like a year later, I started working on my first book, and then Euthanasia came out in 2006. But I'm sorry, what was the initial question on this? It was more about like the character development and like how heroes have to take their journey, right? That's what I was okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So, I just, your responses are so in depth and so much happens. Like I get lost in just listening to you talk about it almost. Like your story is pretty tremendous overall with everything. And I really hope you're able to smash this goal. Yeah, you know, in 30 days, a lot could happen. So far, you know, you've raised 660 in just the amount of days it's been live. And yeah, I mean, it's been what, maybe 7-8 days, 9?
Yeah, like 8 or 9 days.
So I mean, time could tell. You could definitely still triple that number.
Well, the consultants that I hired and talked to, they were like, your first week and your last week are always your top weeks. Your middle 2 weeks are kind of the lulls that you have. So part of what I hired them to do, they made the video, and they're doing like notification pushes on like Facebook and Twitter to help, you know, boost traffic and stuff like that. Yeah, buddy, come here. You're gonna join the party. All right. So this is Grayson. He is one of the Bubbas. Chica is down around my feet. Chica is not in the book yet, but issue 5 is really kind of Grayson's reckoning. You know,
is that after Dick Grayson?
Absolutely. Nightwing.
I love the. Are you reading the current Nightwing run?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, Taylor is just killing it, man. With Heartless. Heartless is like.
I think the thing that I love the most is like, And this was something that they tried to do at the very beginning of this run. Not this run, but like the beginning of this rebirth of Nightwing, where the first arc was called Better Than Batman. And I'm one of these people, like, Nightwing is my main character. I think Batman is overrated. I don't care for Batman that much. I like Batman, but like, if somebody's like Dick Grayson or Bruce Wayne, I'm gonna pick Dick Grayson every day.
So let me ask you this: how did you feel when he was Deadman for a little bit?
When I didn't read that.
Oh.
I actually didn't read that story.
So it's really cool. Like, I'm not gonna spoil too much. I don't know how much of it you already know, but I think that was what, the Injustice storyline.
Yeah, because I think that's how they tied it into when he gets killed during New 52, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I'd heard about it. I just never read it. But like the idea is that I know years and years ago, like, they did a throwback story where Deadman was actually one of the trapeze artists with them, and that's where the big like collar and costume come from, which is stellar. I love that costume so much. It's so dated and it's so cheesy, but I love that costume to death. But what Tom Taylor is doing on Nightwing right now is phenomenal, because he's really made Dick Grayson human. And he's actually literally made him better than Batman, because Batman has had all this money, all this time, and what difference has he made in the community?
Oof.
You know, like, he hasn't.
It's a fair point.
I mean, yeah, you know, he does these charitable things, this and that. Like, Dick Grayson gets all this money handed to him from Alfred. Alfred was a friggin' billionaire who continued, I don't want to say be a servant, but he continued to be a guy who didn't have to do the things that he did because that's what he believed in. And he wanted to see Bruce, Dick, Jason, Barbara, blah, 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 be happy, you know? Like, he didn't want them to continue doing the things that he saw them doing. And in that letter, in his will, when he leaves all that money to Dick, and he says, "You're the only one I trust to do the right thing with this money." And Dick struggles with that for a second, because that's a huge responsibility, right?
Yeah.
But he realizes, like, what would Alfred do? What would honor him the best? What would a hero do? And he freaking plugs it all into public works for things like housing and helping underdeveloped communities and like helping to get people out of poverty. But that immediately was like a huge target on his back. Not as Nightwing, but as Dick Grayson, because it's like organized crime and, you know, crooked politicians and stuff like that need people to stay down here. If we level them up, like, we have no control.
And he was like really ballsy too. Like when he went to go break the ground in the first ceremony, Blockbuster, I think is the dude's name. He hired 2 assassins to take him out. If it wasn't for the Teen Titans and Barb, I think it's Barbara, right? With is it Barkwing too? I think they call the dog. He has like 3 legs. They call him Barkwing. Bitewing. Yeah, Bitewing. It was just insane, because without these Teen Titans, like, he very well could have been assassinated at this thing. But he's out there showing face because he knows the public wants to see it. He knows the public needs it.
Well, not just that, but yeah, like you said, the public needs it. Like, you need something to connect it to, because it can't be anonymous. And when he's got it's not much of a mask, it's a domino mask, but, you know, like, you can kind of be anonymous that way. But
man, and then I'm sorry, but when he was on the docks and all the kids were about to get burned alive when he was up against Heartless, that was such an insane, like, dude, Taylor is just really killing it. You're right. His character development is just insane, dude.
They kind of just dropped Heartless, though. So I really hope Heartless comes back. And,
so I don't know if you read, he made an appearance in the one, I can't remember which, it was the one that was the last. They do it monthly, right, for Nightwing?
Yes.
So I want to say it was last month. But
okay,
I
haven't read last month's yet. So.
I read a lot of Batman Detective Comics, and he's in the Arkham Tower, and that, like, he's pretty much just infiltrated the Arkham Asylum version of this Arkham Tower, and he's surrounded by all these villains, and it is just insane.
That's awesome.
But let's get back to the Bubba Patrol.
Okay.
I always love geeking out.
Yeah. Well, that's the point, right? I mean, it's we're doing this on a Wednesday. It's New Comic Book Day. So I think there's a little bit of something for everybody. Last campaign, I didn't have the catch-up tier. I just had it that you could add on books if you were missing them. Because I know sometimes that's a little not confusing, but like some people are like, well, can I just get all the books together?
Is that the retailer 5-pack?
No, that's different. So there's a catch-up tier that I think is like $30.
Mm-hmm.
It's the special edition, which is issues 1 and 2, because we ran out of 1 and we have like 10 copies of number 2. So not going to do like a whole new printing for both of them, just put them together. Plus, that's the first time you get issue 1 in full color, because the PDF you got, it's like 1 panel per page is colored, but this is the first time you see the book in its entirety colored. There's also the dialogue. I had to redo the dialogue, so it's a little bit different. And there's one extra little thing where when they're training in issue number 2, which you didn't see, there's a box of Nilla wafers that are in Agnew's apron or his robe, and they get crushed, and he throws them away, and he's like really upset. And the very next page, all the dogs are sitting there like talking to Cypress, and they're kind of doing a debrief. And Guri's sitting there eating the Nilla wafers. And so I added a box of Nilla wafers into that scene, just because I thought it would be hilarious. And I kind of want to do like an extra panel where like you get a close up and one of the other dogs is like reaching for the box and she slaps their hand away, because she was very treat motivated. Like she was a little fatty, and like I called her my Chubzor. If she was a Pokemon, she'd be Chubzor. So yeah, there's the catch-up tier. You can add on all the back issues if you want. Like, let's say you're missing 1 or 2 issues, or like you want an extra copy of issue 3. Found out that a lot of people like to collect the homage covers, especially the Amazing Spider-Man 300. I've had people find me on homage pages, or if I posted it somewhere and they're like, do you still have that ASM 300 homage? And
Is that the one that has the black cover?
Yeah. The one that says
that's nice. That's nice. The picture for me is it's small, so I can see the detail enough to make it out.
Okay.
So what goes into those homage covers? Like, do you have to worry about any sort of like Marvel coming at you, or DC coming at you?
No, because there are big companies like Dynamite doing them. Marvel and DC will homage like all their stuff. McFarlane has done that ASM 300 homage like so many times. The big thing you want to do when you do an homage versus a swipe would be you give credit to whoever the artist was who did it first. So with the ASM 300, I'll sign it and then say after McFarlane, because it's an homage of his work. For the special edition, John Byrne did that cover first, so it'd be after Byrne. For the Brave and the Bold homage, that was back in like the Silver Age, so like there weren't like artists didn't regularly sign their covers at that point in time. So I actually had to look up who did that cover so that I could put after so and so. And I forget the name of the artist right now. And forgive me, please don't kill me for that. But I was just like, when I started thinking of this, like we had done the ASM 300, and I was literally talking to Bill about issue 4 and what to do for the cover. And I'm like, I don't want to do another homage. And he's like, why not? And I was like, well, cause like I'm not going to have anything original to say. And being that he worked in the industry, like legit worked in the industry, he basically told me like everything is derivative of something else. And so we kind of got in depth, and I came to the realization like, okay, so even if I do something that's not influenced by something else, it's influenced by something else, and people are going to pick that apart. And he was like, in, more or less words. And so we're literally talking on the phone, and I'm like, issue 4, hold on. And I bring up Avengers issue 4. It's got the characters running at you. And I'm like, what do you think of Avengers issue 4? And he goes, what do you mean? And I told him. And he's like, that's perfect. And I was just like, it is, right? Because they're all wearing their costumes and they're charging forward for the first time. And it's like Avengers Assemble. And, Agnew is their leader, and they're all charging out there. And so each cover gets a little bit more intricate and more complex. Like drawing Cypress on the ASM 300 cover was tricky because, like, how do you get a dog to contort that way, right? Like dog limbs don't work that way. So even though it's a cartoon or a comic book, like, I still had to exaggerate it, and it felt weird at first, and I had to draw it probably 3 times before I got it the way I wanted it. And I wanted to draw everything freehand on it without using like templates. And I was just like, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to draw a perfect circle. Like that's just impossible. It was like, what else can I use? And I was like, dog bone. Just have her flying through the dog. That makes sense because that'll work. But with the homages, it's funny because like there's a certain amount of collectors. Like I probably sold since I was working on issue 4. I think I've sold probably 10 or 12 copies of the ASM 300 homage to straight up homage collectors. And I found that a lot of them don't like their covers to be signed. Like, I'll be like, do you want me to sign that? They're like, no.
No, but that's cool. So it's almost like you getting the homage for 4 like was important. Like, skipping over that, you're missing out on that market that's going to be eating up those issues.
Yeah, and not only that, but I think picking those specific covers, like the one for 4 and the one for 5, were really important because they really do play into the story itself. It's the characters coming forth and uniting for the first time as the team. And then for issue 5, it's them going into battle the first time. It's their real first appearance as the Bubba Patrol, and it's not Poyojira's first appearance, but it is like their first Titanic fight. It's what brought them together, and so it really fits. And I was able to juxtapose all the characters on there because, like, basically what I did for a rough is I took a JPEG of the Brave and the Bold cover, and I just drew on top of it till I got the characters positioned the way I wanted them to. And then I fleshed it out a little bit more and printed that. And then that's like 8.5 by 11. And then I sat at my drawing board with, my full-size sheet and just did it all freehand, just using that as my reference and like my guide as to where I was going with what's going on.
So now I remember us talking about it, and you said you don't know if you said right now this is going to be the last issue. What are you going to be working on after this? Like, are you going to be maybe taking a break for a little bit, or do you have any other projects that are kind of bubbling up?
A couple. This is not the end of the Bubba Patrol. This is just the end of the first story arc. I know what I want to do for future issues. It's going to be like one-shots, oversized one-shots, and graphic novels. I don't want people to have to wait 6 months, a year for the next issue to come out. I don't think that's fair to the consumer. It's also extremely hard on me as a creator because you have to maintain a certain time frame, otherwise you lose readers.
Yeah.
And if I start to tell this in the form of one shots and stories that are self-contained, it's going to be a lot easier. You know, every couple of years or every year you come out with a new book and people can read that and not lose anything. Like if you miss one and you pick up the next one, it's a self-contained story and you kind of get a little bit of a backstory, and it'll still be good. And I think it's actually going to be better for crowdfunding than doing issue 6, issue 7, issue 8, because eventually you get to the point where you're on issue 12 and it's just like somebody's just like, well, I don't want to read all of that, or how do I get all of those issues?
Yeah.
I've seen that with some crowdfunding campaigns that they're not even in to double digits on their books, and because they're printing on demand, most of them are printing to what's being ordered and then a tiny bit on top of that, so that if you want to get those back issue tiers and those catch-up tiers are super expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that to people either. So that's why my catch-up tier is $30 shipped.
Which that's not bad at all. I mean,
yeah,
for 5 issues, that's definitely paying what, maybe $6 an issue to get it shipped to you.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got catch-up tiers. There's 2 really cool variants. One of which is, I always get this mirrored backwards, right behind me here. You can't see it.
Nailed it perfectly though.
Yeah. It's I call it the Say Cheese variant, done by JoJo Seams. She does a comic book called The Makeshift Man. It's all watercolor, beautiful. She's a local artist as well. And she does MetaZoo trading cards. So if you're into MetaZoo trading cards, like, her stuff is pretty crazy killer. Asked her if she wanted to do a variant cover, and the concept for it was a selfie with the character Agnew, like taking the selfie, and he's like, and it's got everybody in it, and he's like, okay, on the count of 3, everybody look terrified, because they're posing with Poyojira, and it's supposed to be them, like, you know, being in shock. And at first JoJo was having some trouble with fitting that many characters, which was a lot to ask, into, like, what a cell phone, like, how are you going to fit 7 characters in there, or 6 characters, or whatever. And so we talked about it, and again, this is where that communication that I learned with Bill really came in handy, because I was trying to communicate it by typing it, and it just wasn't coming across. And I was like, hey, can we talk verbally? And she's like, okay. And while we were talking, I explained to her basically what I was trying to get across. And that's when she came up with well, what if they're setting up tripod, taking a picture? And that way all of them can be in it. Because originally Cypress wasn't going to be on that cover. And I was just like, that's brilliant. And so she churned out the lines and showed me like 2 days later. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so hilarious. And so that was the first variant that we got back. And that's $25. And what I do with all my variant tiers is you get a copy of the A cover as well.
Okay, so you get 2 copies.
Yeah, you get the Brave and the Bold one that, like, if you're a collector, you know, you put the JoJo Seams one away because it's limited to 30 copies total. I'm only making 25 available on the campaign because we're going to do some other stuff where they're randomly inserted in things. And if I sell all 25 of them or all 30 of them, then I can't do that.
Yeah.
So those come with a matching certificate of authenticity that'll be numbered, and they will be matched by who backed them first. So I know who backed that one first. So he gets number 1, number 2, and so forth. And then I had another local artist named Alexiled, who's doing a webcomic series that just launched last Friday, I believe, on Webtoons, called Dealings of the Damned. Their line style is very akin to, if you're a fan of Has Been Hotel, because they're a big fan of that, and they started doing fan art and got this huge following on Instagram. And their Dealings of the Damned webcomic, I guess, is kind of influenced by that. But they also do great monsters. Like they would do these like Monster Girl challenges and stuff. So I was just like, I think you could do a really good Pollo Jira. And I gave them the concept of Mystery Science Theater 3000 with the silhouettes in the front where they're watching the scene from the movie and they're making fun of it. And they crush that as well. So there's Cypress, Guri, and Grayson in the front row. And they wanted to know, like, do you want me to silhouette these out completely? And I was like, I actually like them where you can kind of see them, because that adds to the personality of the characteristics. And so I'm going to add some speech bubbles to it where they're talking about the movie that they're watching, where Pollo Jira's fighting Sabu and Foley and Agnew. And I need to make a logo for that, like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 logo, where it's the moon with the Bubba Patrol.
So is that going to be like a front and back?
Originally, it was going to be wraparound, but then I thought better of it, where that cover is going to be where all the covers are like this, and it was going to be like that. Now it's just going to be like, this is your cover,
I gotcha.
But you just turn it sideways and you get the widescreen.
Yeah.
I thought that would be a little bit easier for the printing, but also kind of a different way. Like there's been books that they've done like widescreen like that. I don't know if they've done the covers that way, but I do know that what's his name? Darwin Cook did a lot of his covers for, it was a variant, like a line of variants that he did for the New 52 in DC, and they were all widescreen. They weren't portrait. And that's not where I'm taking the influence from, but it's just like, I mean, there's precedent to have done it that way. So, it's just a lot of fun, because I think both those artists have such different styles and they're so fun. And I think like for completists, people can back both of those if they want, knowing that they're getting one of only 30 copies that are being printed. And also knowing that they're supporting like not just my project, but supporting these other artists, because, you know, people like to collect specific styles and like genres that cross over. So I'm hoping that it helps in both respects, that MetaZoo fans want to come towards me and Dealings of the Damned fans want to come towards me. But also if people are Bubba Patrol fans and they're like, oh, I'm going to go follow Dealings of the Damned, or I'm going to check out JoJo Seam's MetaZoo cards and I'm going to pick up Makeshift Man. I always try to like cross promote that way, because that's the way we have to be, you know, like, especially as independents, like that's why like having this space to talk to you and reach out to people and tell my story is so important, because I mean, if I'm just drawing stuff, like, does it really matter if there's nobody paying attention to it?
Yeah.
I mean, but there's tons of things that you can pick from, like stuff for retailers. The retailer packs offer a good profit margin for retailers. There's even an option for them to get their own specific retailer cover that nobody else is going to get, and they get a limited number of those. And then there's one that I just threw in there because I thought it'd be funny, because it would basically fund the entire project. The signing at their shop, and that's for anybody outside of the state of Arizona. If somebody inside Arizona wants me to sign at their shop, I'm not going to charge them that.
So what goes into that? Is it hard to find a shop to do a signing at?
Actually, I mean, for me, yes. I've been doing comics for 16 years, and I think, I'll be honest, I'd probably burn my bridges with some people with the content that I create. I tend to be very loud and obnoxious and speak my mind, and sometimes people don't like that. But it's also hard as, you know, people want to say independent comics. And most times when people hear independent, they think Image, Dark Horse, Boom Studios. Now, if that's independent, I don't know what I am. I'm micro press, I guess. um, because my books aren't on any searchable database. You're not going to see them sold on, being flipped on eBay. Basically, you're going to see them being sold by myself through these campaigns. You're going to see them from a couple of local retailers, which I'd like to expand that out of the state a little bit. And last issue 4, we did get a couple of retailers who picked us up outside of the state. So one of the bonuses that people can do, so like if you want to support the Bubba Patrol, or you already do support the Bubba Patrol, and you back the campaign and you go to your local comic shop and you say, hey, check out this campaign, back one of the retailer tiers, tell them I sent you. And so then, ABC Comic Shop backs a campaign, sends me a message and says, hey, Joe Smith told me to check out your campaign, so I backed this tier. That gets them books at a good price, but I'm also going to send a little extra thank you to Joe Smith, or whoever sends that referral, because that helps me immensely. And it's just kind of a nice way of keeping it in home, because word of mouth is the biggest referral that I can get versus, I can't buy ad space in Diamond. I wouldn't want to with their reputation, but I can't afford that. And then 2, ad space on things like Facebook is ridiculous.
Yeah,
unless
it really
you're
is.
dropping thousands of dollars every week, Facebook doesn't care about your ad money.
So my my Facebook page, Joffrey Cody, which I use to get exposure for Keeping It Geekly, I have almost 2,000 followers on it, and I'd get maybe 5-10 views on a video, but you're almost forced to pay for ad space if your friends don't share your content to get the reach, because the algorithm works against you so they can pocket more of that change. Like you said, word of mouth is almost crucial. You could read something on Facebook, but when someone you actually know personally is like, hey, check this out, you're more inclined to want to check it out because you trust their opinion. You're more comfortable with that person.
Yeah. And people know the kinds of things that you're going to be into. If they're friends of yours, if they know you're into comics, if they know you're into movies. One of my really good friends, it was hilarious because when we first became friends, I gave them a copy of a book I did, but I also gave them a copy of Teenagers from Mars, my favorite book. And month goes by, I'm like, hey, did you read it? No. Hey, did you read it? No. Hey, did you read it? No. Hey, did you finally read it? I did, and it was amazing. And I'm like, okay. I basically coerced them into purchasing issues 1 and 2 of the Bubba Patrol. And they message me when they get them. They're like, hey, look what I picked up. And I'm like, oh, cool. Did you read them yet? Because they're real quick reads. Like, you could read through the entire series probably in like an hour. Like 5 issues in an hour is pretty quick. It's going to take longer than that because you're going to want to look at all the images and stuff, but still. And they're like, no. And so then like a week later, I'm like, hey, did you read the Bubba Patrol yet? No. Like probably a month after they picked the Bubba Patrol up, she messages me and she's like, oh my God, I think I have a new favorite comic book. I'm in love with Agnew and Sabu. And I'm like, see, I told you.
I've been trying to tell you.
And it's been that way with like so many things. Like we went to go see Akira together and they were like, I want to read the manga now. Incidentally, they still have volume 1 of the manga that I loaned them and they haven't read it yet. And I'm like, oh my God, just read it. Same, like I'll like spit stuff out to people, especially if they're like, what do you like to read? Or what's your genre? And I think that's what's fun about the Bubba Patrol is that it fits so many different checkpoints that you're looking for. Like my nephew, when he was 4, he couldn't read yet. We sat down and we read the book together and he was following along in the pictures and laughing hysterically. He got a kick out of it. And then when I have collectors who've been collecting since the end of the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, and they love the story and they're like, this is a throwback. There's a lot of heart to this. Younger collectors who maybe didn't even know that there was an independent scene here in Arizona. And when they found out about it, they were like, oh, I'll buy that because I'd love to support an independent creator. And then once they read it, they were like, where can I get more of this? And so it's got, if you're just into comics, if you like supporting independent creators, I mean, those two things alone. If you love superheroes, comedy, adventure, action, and a whole lot of heart, not to mention really cute dogs.
Yeah.
You know, like if none of those things touches your fancy, I'm sorry, the Bubba Patrol is just not for you. But if you want something that is going to be the antithesis of grim and gritty, has to be over the top, bludgeoning you with a blunt object to get your attention, this brightly colored, I don't even know, there's 7 of them or 6 of them, sextet, this brightly colored sextet of heroes is the antidote for all the woes in the world. I mean, like, I don't know how else to put it. Like,
so man, I think that is the perfect way to bring us to our last and one of my most favorite parts of the show. I always enjoy asking creators, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in the industry, who is really trying to break through their first issue?
I mean, the sarcastic part of me would just be like, quit. Because as Jack Kirby is famous to say, and he didn't say quit, but he just said comics will break your heart, kid. And they truly will. Because whether it was losing all those files and having to start over basically from scratch, or having to bounce back from what propelled me in losing Foley and losing family members and trying to find that strength to move forward. I would say my biggest piece of advice is find your motivation for what you want to do and why you want to do it. Your first issue, I know a lot of people think their first issue is going to be amazing. Trust me, it's not going to be. it's and you'll see that as you progress, but always realize every single time you continue, you progress, you get better, your storytelling improves. And I feel like, yeah, that's my thing. You find your motivation and you hold on to it. And that's I think that's kind of the definition for anybody. But
absolutely.
That's what being a hero is too.
Finding your what and your why and writing it out.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate it. I had a blast not only reading the Bubba Patrol, but also talking to you about it, breaking it down, and just everything in between. Once again, this is Cody, and we're here with our good friend John, and we're keeping it geekly.